In this chapter, we're going to be working with forms and form validation, but especially we're going to talk about using jQuery for our form validation. So we'll start out doing a quick review of some basic form things, and then we'll go into working with jQuery to validate our forms. So here we see an example of a small form in a web browser. The form has an email address, a spot for the user's first name, and it has a button to join a list. And we'll take a look at the code for that. So a form has an opening tag for the form, and it has a closing tag for the form. Some of the attributes that we have to give to a form, we usually give it an ID. We always give it an ID. So this one has an ID of email form. Very often the name will match. This one has a name of email form as well. But specific actions for forms, specific attributes for forms is we need an action attribute, and the action attribute specifies when our form is submitted to the server what file is going to process the items that are submitted. In this case, it's sending it to a PHP file called join.php, and that file would run on the server to process whatever contents are submitted from our form. And we also need to specify a method that we're going to use to send that data to the server. In this case, we're using get, which is in the default, that's the default for submitting forms, but post is also an option, and post is probably the more secure option. Remember, get allows you to see the information that's submitted in the address bar. So on our form that we're looking at here, we have a label for the email address, and it's inside of a label tag, and then input type equals text. So this is a text input. Also has the ID of email address, which is why the label knows that it needs to be associated with this input, because this ID matches label 4 up here. We also have a label for the first name, and it's also a text input with an ID of first name. And we have a submit button. So it's an input with type equals submit, and that's what makes the submit button, which says text that says join our list. And that's the value that we see here. The value attribute for that button is join our list. When that button is clicked, because it's a submit button, that's what pulls the data off of our form and sends it to the server to the join.php script. Okay, and since we're using get, we can see that the things that are being sent to the server appear in the URL that gets submitted. So join.php, and it sends email address equals, and in this case it's judy@merck.com, and first name equals Judy, which was the data that we saw in the form in the example. So attributes, we've talked about these. Name, a form element needs a name. It's a name that can be referenced by the client side or the server side code when the data gets sent. It has to have the action, which is the URL that we're sending the information to on the server to process the data in the form. And it has to have the method, which is either get or post. So that's just a quick review of the things that are required for a basic form.